So guys, today's episode, we really want to focus on IULs or flexible premium adjustable life. I was actually at home, Frank, yesterday, and I had an agent call me, and they were in a house and they ran across somebody that had written an adjustable life on somebody that was a little bit upwards in age, and it really didn't give the person much guarantees. And so, long story short, the agent walks out of the house with a $260 sale and now built a relationship where they're going to end up getting some of the other family members. So you could almost say that that's a week maker right there in one house. And so I think the reason why I think it's so important for us to understand these flexible premium adjustable lives and these IULs is not only for us to be able to write them, because obviously we write those a lot and we write some good ones, but also it's to how to understand when one might not have been written correctly in a house, right? And how to go in there and make sure that the person's understanding exactly what they signed up for, so that way you can make sure that when you place the policy, this is a big thing, guys, that the other agent doesn't come back and maybe say something a little bit different or try to get that business back, right? So it can kind of go both ways. It's really important to understand it for writing it, and then really important to understanding it for when you're trying to get in there and get a big house and get a replacement. But kind of tell us a little bit of the backstory of the IUL, Frank. When did that kind of come out, and when did it get popular?
So really, it actually came out back in the late 80s, believe it or not. It's been around for a while, and the idea behind it was good, and you know, when people came out with it, because it was a way to buy a lot of insurance, still build a cash value or a nest egg, if you want to call it that, and then and have some guarantees in the end. The problem with it is, Josiah, and the problem that's been from day one even up to now, is most agents sell it on what's called the minimum premium. Okay. And that is not the way to go, because if you sell an IUL or a universal life, whatever you want to call it, flexible premium adjustable life, if you sell it on that minimum premium, what's going to happen is over time, all the cash values are going to begin to drain down. And at some point, it would just, for lack of a better way to put it, blows up the policy. Yeah. You get into a negative equity situation, and it ends up the customer loses everything they've put into it, plus they lose the coverage as well. So that's typically what happens on this. Again, if agents would write it on the target premium, it would be okay. It would last forever, but most agents don't do that, because that premium tends to be just as high as something that would be what we call permanent insurance, which is kind of what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, that's right. And so with the IUL and flexible premium adjustable life, a lot of these carriers, even like Mutual of Omaha, some of the other carriers, they'll offer kind of like a, hey, this is an easy solve, or hey, this is the amount that we project to last out till 120. And when you see some of those are actually written really well. The premium's a little bit closer to that whole life price, so that's why they're still able to build enough of that cash value in those younger years to make it last. But I always compare the idea of how an IUL works, or a flexible premium adjustable life, as kind of like a mixture of whole life and term, because it has that whole life feature of building cash value, building some values that you can loan against or surrender the policy for, but then it also has something called cost of insurance. And so how an IUL works, or this type of policy works, is every year that cost of insurance for the amount of coverage that the client has is going to be going up, right? And so as that goes up, it eventually goes up above what the person's paying in premiums. And so when that threshold happens, that's when that difference in premiums is starting to get taken out of the cash value, kind of in layman's terms, right? So at the beginning, you're growing cash value, you're overpaying the cost of insurance. Towards the end, you're underpaying what the cost of insurance, and they're using your cash value to pay for the difference. That's why it can be kind of like a whole life, but also like a term, because guess what happens? You could end up with increased premiums down the road, and if that happens, I've seen clients paying $1,200, even like $1,500 a month to keep those things, and that can be really dangerous.
So just to kind of simplify what you were saying, you know, and I like to, if you know me, I like to keep things simple.
Keep it simple.
So it's kind of like pouring liquid into a bucket, okay? And at the initial of a universal life, you're pouring more liquid into the bucket than you're taking back out for the cost of the insurance. You refer to the cost of insurance. So that bucket does what? It starts to fill up. But guess what? As the client becomes older, and the cost of the insurance does what? It goes up, right? So then you start taking more out of the bucket than you're putting into the bucket. And then what happens? That bucket begins to drain down, and then slowly over time it becomes totally empty. And at that point, the client loses the coverage or has an option of paying a ridiculously high premium that they probably can't
Got to
afford.
pour a lot more water in that bucket if they want
Correct.
to keep it. That's right.
Correct.
More than that's coming out. And so that's the dangerous part, though. And a lot of times people are confused. How do I even start to, one, understand this, but then two, to get the client to understand this while I'm in the house and use their numbers so they can really see what's going on. And so there's two ways that I find that you can do that. If you have the policy, then it's really easy. There's a little chart in the policy that says cost of insurance per thousand. And on that chart, it's going to show male, female, and it's going to have their ages on there. And what you'll do is you'll go to the age for that client at this specific time, and it'll give you a decimal point number. Now, this is a cost per thousand sheet, right? So if the person has 50,000 or 100,000, you would just simply take that decimal point number and multiply it by the amount of thousands that the client has. So like I said, simple enough. If they have 100,000, you multiply that decimal point number by 100, and it gives you what their maximum cost of insurance is. Now, you heard what I said there, maximum. If you call the carrier, you're going to get the accurate, actual cost of insurance for this past year. So I always encourage agents to do that, because not only are you going to get the actual cost of the insurance, you're going to see if that person might have surrendered some of the cash value, which hurt the policy and lowered the death benefit. You'll see if there's a loan on it or any premiums that were missed. And it's always good to just do a thorough check to make sure, hey, this thing's going to have enough cash value to really last this person's whole life. Because if it's not, I promise you, it's either time to switch now because the cash value's gone, or we might need to get that cash value before it gets depleted, because this might only be a future 3-year or 5-year term on you, Miss Smith. And if the client's still healthy, no health issues, no medicines, and maybe still in their 60s or 70s, it might be time to get that thing switched to a permanent life, a whole life policy that's going to make sure it locks them in for the rest of their life and a better utilization of the premium.
So typically, Josiah, I like to do this. When I would go into a house, the law requires that all companies send each client what's called an annual statement every year.
That's right.
A lot of people lose these, throw them away, whatever. But if you can put your hands on that, it's going to give you what's currently going on with the policy. So typically on the annual statement, you're going to have 3 columns. You're going to have a projected value column, you're going to have a current value column, and then you're going to have a guaranteed value column. Okay, so focus on the guaranteed, because I can project something all day long, but it doesn't mean that it's going to happen, right? The current values, that's great, but that's what's happening today. So you have to focus on those guaranteed values. And when you look at those guaranteed values, it's going to have the yearly layout on it. And you can go down and you can actually show the client where the coverage goes out, or they have a choice of paying a higher premium, putting more into the policy. And I think if you focus on that, and I would never had a problem replacing one of these when I would go to those guaranteed values, because that's what you have to go off of. We can't assume what the future is going to do. I don't know any more than you do, but the guaranteed values is what the company guarantees. So if you focus on that and you show that to the client, then they understand in more simpler terms, hey, I might lose this coverage one day, or hey, I may have to pay a much higher premium to keep this coverage. So I always tell agents, find that annual statement. If you don't have it, then like you said, call into the carrier, get the information. Information is key. Don't be afraid to take the time to do that. And when you're talking to the carrier, say, listen, what are the guaranteed values? I'm not interested in the projected. I'm not interested in the current.
I don't want you to send me something in the mail that tells me the future projections. Yeah, I get that all the time. So I definitely know what you're talking about there, Frank.
So that's typically what we do. You know, I've always trained agents to look at that, and if you focus on those guaranteed values, more times than not, it's going to run out, because I can tell you 99.9% of these policies are sold on the minimum premium. Yep. And that's why they don't work.
And kind of the sad part is, and I hate to say it this way, but the insurance industry's hard, Frank, right? There's not a lot of agents that are making it to that 4th, 5th year mark when it comes to like corporate insurance, insurance that's not lead driven. And a lot of times what you'll see with IULs is it was somebody that they knew that wrote them the policy because they might have fell into somebody's warm market that got in with more of a financial style company. And that's when you really saw a lot of those IULs IULs, or at least I have out in the field. And so those ones, when they're written, might be by an agent that has only been in the business 3 to 6 months, and they're just trying to write what they think is a whole life at the minimum premium, thinking that, hey, this person, yeah, they might have to pay a little bit higher premiums down the road, but it's still whole life. And they're just slinging them out there. Hate to say it, agent doesn't there next year, and then all of a sudden you're coming in 15 years down the road, and that's when the uncovering starts. So the reason why I tell you guys that story is, when you go in and hey, I got an annual statement, you've diagnosed it's an IUL, you cannot go into bash mode, because this is going to be somebody that person a lot of times knew, or still might know, or goes to church with, or somebody that sold it through Warm Market. So yes, it's a high probability chance it might not have been written correctly, but it's an agent that they have a warm relationship with. So be real careful how you're talking. It's always the company charging them, and the company that set up this policy. It's never anything on that past agent, I promise you.
So, one thing, Joseph, I think we need to explain, there's a difference between an IUL and a UL. Okay, right. An IUL is a much different product than a universal life is. An IUL has an investment piece to it. It's actually tied to what the S&P 500 or what the stock market is doing. Okay, so an IUL is a very unique product, and if it's written correctly, it's actually a great product. I have one myself, to be totally honest with you.
Good.
They're great products, but what that does is you get the upside of the stock market, but without the downside of losses. Okay, so you don't lose money on that investment piece of it no matter what, but you get the upside up to a certain percentage of the stock market on there. Now, most people use those as investment type plans, and typically what it does, it's really the only loophole that's still left in the tax code, where you can put money into something and then you can turn around and loan it back out, because loan proceeds are what? Non-taxable, right?
That's right.
So you can actually loan that money back out at some point and end up not paying taxes at all on the growth of that money.
Or a surrendering of the death benefit. Some of the companies allow you to surrender the cash value as part of the death benefit early, and that's also not taxable because it's based on the money that you've paid in as well. And that's why these companies have what's called a 7-year MEC limit. They cap the amount that somebody can force into those policies to try to avoid that tax code. And a lot of times, guys, if you're seeing one that was written that way, like the one that Frank has, those can be really well written and really good policies for the clients, because they were so overfunded when it comes to cost of insurance that the interest that they're building far over exceeds the amount that the cost of the insurance is charging them. And so that's where those policies can be really good. What we're referring to in the bad ones is when they're underfunded and they don't have that cost of insurance covered. That's where it can get really dangerous.
It really can. And again, on the traditional ULs, the traditional universal life, which is what, with our clientele, that's what you're going to be running into. You're hardly ever going to see an IUL.
Yep.
Those are primarily written on the minimum premium, and then you have to focus on the guaranteed values. And I always tell agents, get that out, look at it. If they don't have their annual statement available, do like you said, flip over in the policy. You're going to see that table of maximum cost of insurance. Sometimes they even put the original illustration in the policy that is required for the agent to show the client when they took the policy out. Now, most agents don't show it to them, let's be honest. But they do. Some companies even put that original illustration in the policy. Some companies
will even make you get that signed if you're doing a big enough premium one.
Correct.
Yeah, you'll actually have to get that signed before you can even get the policy issued. But one thing that you were talking about, Frank, that I want to make sure that the audience really understands is the idea of indexing, right? So that's just a strategy that a lot of different financial products use, like annuities, IULs. I'm sure the list goes on with different type of products and stuff out there that can use that strategy. But to understand indexing, guys, all that means is they're capping your gains and they're capping your losses. So kind of like the idea of a zero is your hero. Say the stock market goes down for multiple years in a row. Well, if you're capped at zero, you don't experience those down times. Well, also in turn, if you're going to be capped at zero, we're probably going to cap you on the top too, right? So at the top, say the stock market does 30% that year and whatever that your IUL is invested in, well, they're going to cap you at a certain percentage on that as well. So that's where the safety nets come into play when it comes to the IUL. is, yes, you're being capped on the gains, but you're being capped on the losses too. So the steady growth is going to always outweigh it because it never takes those down years. And so that's why that those are built and they can last. And the strategy has been proven where if you look up a lot of charts over the last 50, 75, 100 years, that indexing strategy does a lot of times outperform different investment strategies. And so that's why it can be a safe place for an annuity or an IUL to be written based off of that kind of strategy.
You have to find the right client for that. We do write those, and actually, some of our carriers have some fantastic IUL products that are out right now, and they work really well. Like you said, they're indexed. You cap your losses and you cap your gains. But for younger clients, I would say probably under the age of 50, that's what you want to look at is that type of product. They're traditionally not a final expense client, and they're probably, if you do write them a final expense plan, they're probably not going to keep it because somebody's going to come along and offer them one of these other products. So I would say if you're going to write those type products, and again, Mutual of Omaha, American Amicable, some of our carriers have great products. Transamerica just came out with a new one. So they have great products that you can actually write that segment of our clientele. We don't run across those clients very often, but we do. When we do, it's great to have that type of product to write them, and that's what you need to be writing them. Yeah. If they're healthy, number one, and if they're affluent and going to be an IUL client. And
my biggest thing too, Frank, is don't let this overwhelm you if you're a new agent, right? Because the idea of trying to learn, okay, I've got to learn what makes IULs bad, or what makes universal lives bad, or flexible premium adjustable lives bad, and what makes them good. Maybe I want to write one because I have a client that it makes sense, and I want to make sure that I'm not messing it up, right? Well, the beauty of this thing, guys, is each carrier does webinars weekly that teaches you not only how to use the illustration software for Transamerica, Mutual of Omaha, some of the other carriers we have this too as well, but they have these webinars that'll walk you through exactly how to use their software and understand it. And then let's take it even a step farther. Say you don't even have the time to get on that webinar. You can just call them, and they actually have teams sitting there in new business waiting to do illustrations and to build these things out for you guys the proper way. So don't let it intimidate you. There's professionals that you can get on the line with, and they'll even do most of the work for you. All you have to do is understand the concept and how it works, and making sure that it's what's best for the client. It's something that's going to last for them. As long as you check all those boxes, the structuring, the writing it those first few times until you feel confident in it, you can use the home office staff at those insurance companies. And again, for those of you that just kind of like to learn stuff yourself, use the webinars. You get an email every single week from them. You can just go to your search bar on your email and type in the product for that carrier that you want to write, the IUL, Universal Life, whatever that is, and there will be list of different webinars that are coming up with those carriers. So just be looking out for that, guys, because that can really help you as you're trying to tackle this new beast.
Most of the carriers have recorded webinars on this that you can go back and access and look at, and we're going to make those available as well in the coming months and weeks on our website as well, where you can have those. And we're going to do trainings on those also, but like Josiah said, make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure it's the right client, make sure it's a good fit. Suitability and all that comes into play when you're doing these index universal life products. Me personally, I don't really like just a straight universal life policy. I would get one or the other. If I was going to buy a UL product, it would be an IUL, or I would just simply go with something that's guaranteed. There's so many great new products out there now. There's so many great guaranteed whole life products that are out there now that our carriers offer. So it's just make sure it's a good fit. Make sure you're dealing with the right client. Typically, again, they're going to be people below the age of 50, maybe up to 55 even today. And as long as they're healthy, I think those are good fits for those type clients.
So talk about that just real quick, Frank. Health, right? Because there's different styles of simplified issue, and then there's fully underwritten. And so with IULs especially, if you're getting into one that's a really big premium, like say a $1,200, $1,500, and you're going with one of the carriers that Senior Select has that's more of like that financial style company, then you might want to get it fully underwritten. And just be prepared. That's going to take you a while. You're going to have to get a nurse out. They're going to do a lab slip, full physical, and all that. If you want to do more of the simplified issue, which a lot of our carriers offer as well, that one's easy to write. I will tell you that the standards are a little bit stricter when it comes to medicines that people can be taking and different health issues that they've had in the past. And so that's why Frank had mentioned that it's a lot better for some kind of those people under the age of 55, because normally those people aren't going to be on as many medicines, haven't reached as many health issues, and have, like we talked about earlier, more years to build cash value. But health-wise is big too, because what do you not want to do, Frank? You do not want to go into a house of a 65-year-old, 70-year-old person, promise them the world on this IUL, and then you go through 2 hours with them to write it and they get declined back from the carrier. Now you're trying to switch to a $30 or $40 higher whole life policy, and that's a little bit of backtracking, right? That might be tough to sell.
Well, just to kind of simplify it a little bit, what you're saying, and you're exactly right. Make sure it's a good fit. Do your underwriting job. Like if you're sitting there with a diabetic who had stents put in 3 years ago, that's probably not going to be a good risk for a UL or an IUL type product, or one of those, or a term product even. Yeah. So you want to make sure you got a qualified client. And like you said, the underwriting is much more intensive. Okay, they're going to do a deeper dive. They're going to do a deeper dig into their health history. And it's going to take a longer, just be prepared, it's going to be a longer period of time before that plan gets issued. Now again, if we're trying to do what's best for the client, which we always encourage that, and we say to do that, yeah, go ahead and do that type plan. But those typically, most of the people we sit down with are not IULs. Right,
yeah, few and far between. Most of that is going to be family members or friends of the people that you run into, like yourself. You know what I mean? Because I guarantee that's the type that you ended up taking out with that type of policy. So it's the people that really want to get closer to that 7-year MEC amount, that have seen the YouTube videos, that understand the concept, that have talked to a financial advisor, and that when the ones that are searching for that, that's the ones I would go fully underwritten. Other than that, you don't want to bring that up. And then other than that, on top of that, just like you said, they had health issues. They're 65 years old. Don't even lead with an IUL or universal life. Just know that that's not on the table, because that's going to ruin your odds in the house for getting that sale. So, guys, we hope that brought you to a conclusion today. Hope you learned a lot about IULs. Ciao.